Have you ever met a man who has everything but feels like nothing? He's built his body like a fortress, learned to command a room, maybe even mastered money. And yet, late at night, when the adrenaline fades and the silence creeps in, he lies awake, haunted by a question he can't shake. What am I really fighting for? Welcome to the channel where we dive headfirst into the soul of masculinity. This is not just a space for advice. It's a search for meaning, purpose, and truth. If you're tired of shallow takes and ready for something deeper, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, what you're about to hear may change the way you see manhood forever. Let's start with something nobody wants to say out loud. Most modern men are spiritually starving. Not weak, not broken, not failures, but hungry. Not for success, not even for respect, but for something sacred, something eternal. And the most shocking part? Many don't even know it. You can see it in their eyes, in locker rooms, office boardrooms, even on TikTok live streams. A quiet ache, an invisible wound. They can bench press 300 pounds, but can't lift the weight of their own emptiness. Why? Because men were not made only for survival. They were made for mission, for sacrifice, for worship. And whether you believe in God or not, the truth is the soul of man craves the divine. It always has. You think this is new? Let me take you back, far back, to the gates of ancient Babylon, where warriors etched prayers into stone before heading into battle. They didn't pray out of superstition. They prayed because deep down, they knew that real strength does not come from within. It's bestowed. The Roman centurion carried his gladius not just to conquer, but to protect the sacred order he believed in. Even the Norse berserker screaming into the wind believed he was being watched by gods. Across cultures, across centuries, man has always looked upward before he looked inward. But what happens when a man no longer believes anyone is watching? We're living in that moment right now, in a culture that celebrates autonomy but punishes faith, that gives men all the tools to become gods but none of the truth to kneel before one. It's no coincidence that depression rates are highest among men in nations where belief in God is lowest. The less we believe in something higher, the more we collapse into ourselves. And this isn't just philosophy, it's biology. Studies show that belief in a higher power, even when vague, is linked to increased dopamine regulation, reduced cortisol levels, and stronger resilience in adversity. Why? Because when a man believes his suffering is not meaningless, he becomes dangerous in the best possible way. He stops asking, "Why me?" and starts asking, "What now?" He doesn't just endure pain, he transforms it. Now I know what you might be thinking. What if I don't believe in God? Maybe you're agnostic. Maybe you're angry at the church. Maybe God feels like a distant myth told by weak men to control strong ones. And you know what? That's fair. The modern religious world has given many reasons to doubt. Hypocrisy, corruption, dogma. But don't confuse bad representatives with the absence of truth. Even Nietzsche, the man who famously declared God is dead, later warned of what would come next. A society where men create their own morality would become a society where no morality survives. In his final years, Nietzsche didn't celebrate atheism. He feared what would rise in its place. Nihilism, the idea that nothing matters, that no purpose exists, that life is a cosmic accident with no meaning and no mercy. And men, especially men, cannot thrive in that vacuum. Because masculinity is not simply about power. It's about purpose, about why you fight, not just how you fight. Remove that why, and even the strongest man becomes aimless. Let me tell you a true story. There was a Navy SEAL, hardened, fearless, elite. He had survived wars, lost brothers, and buried friends. But he confessed in a podcast, with trembling voice, that nothing terrified him more than retirement. Not because he feared weakness, but because he didn't know who he was without the mission, without the higher purpose. It wasn't the gun I missed, he said. It was the reason to pick it up. And that right there is why men need God, even if they don't believe yet. Because God doesn't just give rules, he gives context. He tells you that the pain you feel is part of a larger arc, that your strength is not just for success but for sacrifice, that your instincts to protect, provide, and persevere are not flaws of toxic masculinity, but echoes of divine design. When men lose belief in God, They don't stop worshiping. They just start worshiping lesser things. Status, women, wealth, likes, hustle, image. We've replaced sacred altars with glowing screens and think we've evolved. But deep inside, the soul knows it's been robbed, and the hunger gets louder. Ever wondered why men obsess over superhero movies? Why The Matrix, Gladiator, Batman Begins, and Fight Club still grip male audiences? Because they echo something primal. They awaken the sleeping king, the forgotten warrior, the man who was built not just to survive the world, but to serve something greater than himself. Even Tyler Durden, the chaotic anarchist of Fight Club, whispers a dark truth. We're the middle children of history. No purpose, no great war, no great depression. Our great war is a spiritual war. Our great depression is our lives. That wasn't fiction. That was prophecy. So what's the answer? Is it going to church? Reading the Bible? Maybe. But that's not where it starts. For many men, it starts with a whisper. A moment. A crack in the wall they've spent years building. A question they can't ignore anymore. What if there's more? What if I was made for something greater? And when that question sinks in, it changes everything. Not overnight, not in fire and thunder, but slowly, like a sunrise over a battlefield. One beam of light at a time. A man starts seeing differently. He doesn't walk into the gym just to flex. He trains because discipline is sacred. He doesn't grind for money just to prove himself. He provides because he's called to protect. He doesn't flirt for validation. He builds a kingdom for someone to enter. Something inside begins to realign. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but powerfully. Because masculinity was never meant to be hollow dominance. It was always meant to reflect something eternal, something holy. And once a man tastes that truth, he can never go back to small living. Let me pause here. We're only getting started. What comes next will take us into ancient myths, modern psychology, and some of the most personal moments men have dared to speak aloud. If you're ready to go deeper, ask the questions no one else is asking, and maybe, just maybe, feel something stir in your chest that you've tried to forget. Then stay with me. So here we are, standing at the edge of a question most men are afraid to ask out loud. Do I need God even if I don't believe in Him yet? Not religion, not ritual, but God. The idea that something above me is the source of my mission, the author of my strength, the witness to my struggle. And if you feel that tension in your chest right now, that's not weakness, it's awakening. Let me take you into a story most men have never heard, buried deep in history. In the ancient Hebrew scriptures, there's a strange account of a man named Jacob. One night he found himself alone in the desert, wrestling with something. The text says a man, but others say it was God Himself. And they fought. All night. Dust, sweat, bruises, silence. No words. Just a man wrestling with the divine. And Jacob, wounded, limping, clinging, whispers, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The next morning he walks away with a limp, but also with a new name. Israel, the one who wrestles with God. What if that's the real shape of belief for men? Not blind faith, not perfect obedience, but wrestling, struggling, refusing to let go until the darkness gives way to light. That story tells us something profound. God doesn't punish the man who wrestles. He renames him. And in doing so, He reveals a secret most men miss. God is not threatened by your doubts. He's waiting in them. You don't need to fake belief to start the journey. You just need to show up to the fight. Because the truth is, every man is already in a war, whether he wants to admit it or not. A war for his mind, his time, his soul. You think your porn addiction is about pleasure? You think your rage is just bad temper? You think your scrolling habit is just boredom? These are battles at the edge of your spiritual life. The very things we downplay are the things that drag us furthest from meaning. One man wrote to me after watching a video like this. He was an atheist, or at least he claimed to be. Tough guy, MMA coach. He said he had no use for religion, no space for fairy tales. But one night, after burying his father, he sat alone on his balcony, holding a glass of whiskey, staring at the stars. And for the first time, he whispered, "If you're real, say something." He didn't hear a voice, but he cried. For the first time in 15 years. He said it felt like the armor cracked, like something had waited patiently behind the wall, watching, not judging, just waiting. What if that's God? Not the angry sky father with lightning bolts, but the silent presence who sees your fight and stays anyway. The one who knows your darkest thoughts and doesn't flinch. The one who knows what broke you and still calls you son. And maybe that's what scares us the most. Not that God doesn't exist, but that he does. And if he does, then we are not the highest authority in our lives. Our strength, our pride, our autonomy, all of it would have to bend, not in shame, but in surrender. And surrender terrifies men raised to believe they must control everything or be nothing. But ask yourself, has all this control made you free or more anxious? Has your independence brought peace or just loneliness masked in noise? Maybe, just maybe, you weren't meant to carry all of it alone. Maybe the load isn't proof of your masculinity. Maybe it's a cry for the divine. Look at the greatest men in history, not by wealth, but by legacy. Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, King David, C.S. Lewis, Frederick Douglass, Marcus Aurelius. Different faiths, different ages, but one thing in common. They all bowed to something higher than themselves. That's not weakness. That's what anchored them. That's what made their masculinity dangerous to evil, because it was rooted in more than ego. Here's the truth we've buried in this culture of self-help and self-worship. You cannot truly know who you are as a man until you know who made you. Your strength has a source. Your mission has a sender. Your life has a caller. And when you strip away the noise, you'll hear it. Not with your ears, but with your soul. The faint echo that whispers, you were made for more. Not just more money, more muscles, more followers, but more purpose, more meaning, more truth. The kind that doesn't bend with opinion or collapse under failure. The kind that roots you so deeply that storms no longer scare you. So if you come this far, I want to leave you with a challenge. Not to believe blindly, but to ask boldly. Tonight before you sleep, when the phone is down and the lights are off, ask the question, God, if you're real, show me, find me, fight for me. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of a warrior's journey. You don't need perfect words, just a cracked heart. You don't need a church pew, just a moment of silence. You don't need to believe everything right now, just enough to ask. Because men don't need God after they have it all together. They need God in the fight, in the middle of the divorce, in the confusion, in the failure, in the moment when success tastes like sand. That's where faith is born. Not in answers, but in the ache. And if you still don't believe, that's okay. Just don't stop searching. Because the day you stop searching, you stop growing. And masculinity, true masculinity, is a journey, not a destination. A constant climb toward courage, toward conviction, and maybe, if you're brave enough, toward God. Before you click away, pause. Think. Reflect. Ask yourself, not what do I believe about God, but what does my life say I believe? What do I worship when no one's looking? What do I run to when life breaks me? Because every man serves something. And the strongest men in history weren't the ones who served themselves. They were the ones who bowed their heads, so they could stand taller than the rest. Thanks for watching. If this stirred something in you, let it keep stirring. Don't silence it. Let it challenge you. Let it change you. Share this with a man who needs to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. And if you're ready for more truth, more depth, more fire, subscribe. Because this isn't just a channel, it's a call to something higher. And maybe, just maybe, he's been calling you too.